Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another episode of Wild and Live. We've had a couple of issues on this side. It's great. It always tends to happen at the perfect moment when you need it the least. But thanks for bearing with us. We've got a very special guest in today. So usually we tend to focus on specific subjects, but our next guest has had quite a few wild experiences. I thought we'd cover a few different things, so I hope that you guys enjoy what we're about to get into. If you're a new viewer and you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and smash that subscribe button, become part of this community. I'm enjoying doing this, so let's go for it. Today's guest is the Senior Program Manager of Eastern Africa for Fauna and Flora International, Nicolas Tubbs. Are you wild and live?
Patrick, yes, I am.
Hey, how you doing? How's it all going?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. So just to kind of explain to everybody what's going on today, I mean, we had a conversation, I think it was last week, and I was trying to nail down the exact topic and subject that we were going to talk about, and it's just sounded like you had so many wild experiences. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what you do and why you have, some of these close encounters that you're about to share with us, how you ended up in that position?
Sure. I think since a very young age, I was about 6 watching Sir David on television, Commandant Cousteau, Nicolas Hulot and others on TV, and I just thought that's the sort of job I want to do in the future. And yeah, really passionate about conservation. And my problem is that I can't really specialize in something really specifically. I'm just interested in absolutely everything. So I just know bits and bobs about various things, but I can't say I'm a specialist about this, that, or the other. I'm just interested in too many things of this natural world. So over the last sort of 17 years, I've been working in various contexts, a lot of sort of crisis management. I'm now fortunate of working for an organization like FFI where so David is even the vice president. So it's quite interesting to have that sort of full circle from the age of 6 till now. I can sort of work in parts like South Sudan, the Philippines, Cameroon, but now with FFI focusing on East Africa.
Great. Well, there were 3 stories that came up during our conversation that I thought we could have a chat about. One in particular, an encounter with a forest elephant. Maybe we'll save that for last. But why don't we? Why don't we start with great apes in Cameroon? You spent some time out in Cameroon working with great apes. Would you like to tell us what species you're working with and what exactly you're doing out there?
Yeah, sure. So this goes back a few years ago now, but I was working on socioecology, habitat use of great apes, so focusing on gorillas and chimps. And basically I was living in a tent, working with Bantu people and Baka people, so pygmies. And we were spending our days sort of tracking gorilla and chimpanzee groups, collecting data, collecting fecal samples, and trying to figure out what they were doing, how they were doing it, what they were eating. So physically quite demanding. We were deep in the bush. We were walking about 25 kilometers a day over at least 6 days a week. And yeah, that was just an amazing experience, amazing knowledge of the people I was working with, and just learned so much through them.
You say that you were gathering all that knowledge. What was it like to track these gorillas and chimps that you were studying? Were you able to get quite close to them, or did you have to keep some distance?
Yeah, so we managed to get quite close. I mean, the problem is that with the thick undergrowth, it's always quite difficult to actually get to see them. I mean, you know what it's like. And so actually, you could go days without actually seeing them. But it's amazing how all your senses end up being really alert. So your hearing gets a lot better. Your sense of smell gets a lot better. So at the stage, you could actually smell the gorillas from a distance, and you can actually hear them in the distance, etc., even though you might only be 10, 15, 20 meters away. So yeah, no, it was a great experience. Then, but then we had a bit of a crisis in the sense that we started finding some dead apes. And so we ended up finding dead chimps, dead gorillas. So then long story short, we were under lockdown. We were put in a quarantine in the bush, and yeah, long story short, it ended up being anthrax. Had it been something like Ebola or something else, I wouldn't be here. But that was a slightly sort of nerve-wracking period.
And so was that an attack on those gorillas, or was that just a naturally occurring bacteria that had spread in that population?
It was naturally occurring, yeah. So anthrax is quite common, and a lot of animals in the wild will be dying from diseases like anthrax, but particularly for species like great apes. If I'm not mistaken, there are about 800 odd diseases that you can pass from gorillas to humans and humans to gorillas. So we're in the midst of the pandemic now with Corona. It just sounds a real strong reminder that we're so closely connected to the natural environment that surrounds us.
Yeah, certainly. I feel that you having that experience and sharing that with us, I think it's really great. How can we? I'd like to rewind to how you were talking about how you were able to smell those gorillas. What do they smell like?
It's a very distinct smell, quite hard to describe, but there's a certain, I would say, earthiness. There's a certain earthiness. You can smell like earth. You can smell. There's a bit of a, and we spent a lot of time collecting fecal samples, and actually you can go through that and through sieves, etc., to actually figure out what they were eating. So identifying the seeds of the plants that they were feeding on. And being able to track these great apes for entire days with the Baka and the Bantu, actually the knowledge and how they manage to track these animals, and that it's relatively easy, in the peak of the rainy season. But when you're in the peak of the dry season, they'll just find a leaf that's flipped over and they'll say they've been here, and then you just think you must be joking. How can you possibly know? But they were always right, and that just blew my mind.
Your story reminds me of a gorilla tracking expedition I went on in Uganda to the Bwindi impenetrable forest, and it does take a long time to track them, and you do have to look for those very subtle signs in what seems to be the same part of the jungle and forest that you're walking through. But then, those moments that you finally get to encounter the gorilla families, sometimes they're up in trees, to see these massive gorillas, and then understanding they still have the ability to climb. And then finally we had the opportunity to come and rest and sit down next to them at the top of this mountain in a clearing. A really special moment, and one which I'd recommend for everybody. What was that moment like for you or those moments like when you were really close to these gorillas?
It's amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And you just, I think that I feel very blessed to be in the position that I am today and having had those experiences, because it's just amazing to have that encounter. And I think it's as much about the wildlife as it is with the people with who you're sharing it with. I think you just go back to, the 6-year-old watching those natural history programs, because I wasn't so much interested in Disney at that age, but I was a lot more into natural history programs.
I want to touch on the fact that you were reintroducing chimps, if that's correct. Could you tell us a little bit about that and then move on to some crops?
Sure. So I was working in the Republic of the Congo, not to be confused with the Democratic Republic of the Congo, two separate countries. So in the Republic of the Congo, we were working on reintroducing chimpanzees that were on different islands. We were then that was a sort of transition for them. And then we were sort of releasing them in the wild and tracking them. So they had collars. And so there we were spending our days sort of monitoring those chimps' reintroduction. So it was really successful for the females, because then the females could then sort of mingle with the wild population there. It was a lot more challenging for the males. Chimps are really violent and aggressive with each other and between groups, and usually, lone males will get killed or will get severely injured when the females can weave their way and seduce the wild males.
Yeah, sounds quite interesting. A bit hectic there for the fellas. Let's move on to your time spent out in the Philippines. You were working with crocodiles, in particular. Well, why don't you tell us about it? You were working with some crocodiles. What were you doing out there, and why?
So I was doing some research on a critically endangered species of crocodile, Crocodilis mindorensis, also known as the Philippine crocodile. This is a freshwater crocodile. And I was working in the northeast of the main island, Luzon, particularly in one river where it had sort of cliff edge, really steep. And basically those crocodiles were using caves on either side of the river. There were about, maybe 10 years ago, there were about 100 individuals left in the wild. Now the numbers are closer to 200, 250, I believe. And I was trying to understand why they were using those caves. So I was doing that. I like a challenge. I was doing that in typhoon season, in a typhoon hotspot, during surveys of these crocodiles, and trying to go into those caves and understanding why they were using those caves. And as part of that, we were doing night surveys, flashing torches, deep in the river. But also we managed to trap 2 crocodiles and put transmitters on them. I'm pleased to say that actually to this day, if I'm not mistaken, we managed to trap the biggest Philippine crocodile, which was just under about 3 meters long. And it took about 5 of us to restrain it. So, that was good fun.
Yeah, I can imagine wrestling a crocodile would be good fun. Also would be fearful for my life. How do you go about capturing a crocodile safely for yourselves and also for the animal?
Again, the local knowledge there was absolutely paramount. So I was working with amazing people, including the actor people, and who are hunter-gatherers. And we tried different kinds of traps. And actually, the most traditional one, if you want, was actually the most successful one. So we used bait, we used chicken, and as a form of sort of noose knot that would sort of trap the crocodile. And then basically you set that overnight, and then very early in the morning, you just go and check all the traps. And then if you see a crocodile, then you just sprint as quickly as you can as a team, and you try and restrain it.
So you make it sound so simple. Sprint for the crocodile, try and restrain it. And can you tell us what exactly were you trying to find out about those particular crocodiles? You said that at one point there were only 100 of them left in the wild. How many are left now? Have their populations been bolstered again?
So it is still endangered. It's actually even critically endangered. There are only about 250 individuals left today. There's been some reintroduction taking place. I was part of the team that actually released the first one back to the wild, but now they've released many more. So they've been collecting the eggs, getting those to hatch in captivity, and then releasing those. The main threat is really habitat destruction. There's a lot of agriculture going on and obviously deforestation going on in that part of the Philippines. So, what I was trying to do was really understand why they were using those caves. And actually, there is a bit of food for them in those caves. And those caves were really quite deep. So we had to go on all fours and sort of find our way through. But the main reason is that they would use those as burrows, as sort of refuge, particularly during the typhoons, because otherwise they would get absolutely flushed downstream.
So I'm just picturing this. If anybody's wondering why I'm pausing, because you casually say, we just got on all fours, like crawling through. Were you not scared that you'd come head first into the jaws of a crocodile?
I must say the first couple of times I wasn't that confident, but I was with a guy called Mario, who was absolutely amazing, and he kept saying that he was confident the crocodile was not in that cave. So, I just had to trust him. And again, trust that local knowledge. And yeah, it's good. He was never wrong. So we didn't come across a crocodile head on,
Yeah,
thankfully.
thankfully. I mean, well, you've still got your head on, so you clearly made out alive. You clearly have a passion for animals and for working with communities, and it seems animal encounters. You've kind of touched on a few of them there with gorillas, chimps, crocodiles, but you had a heart-stopping moment with when you came face to face with a forest elephant. Who won?
He did obviously, but I think that moment, yes, I was tracking chimps, and this was in the Congo. Interestingly enough, in Cameroon, the elephants would just run away, but in the Congo, they tend to be a lot more aggressive. So I was tracking chimps, and at that time of the year, they were particularly interested in a certain fruit that the elephants were really keen on as well. So really thick undergrowth, and this is the forest elephant, which is obviously quite different to the ones that you see in the savannas. They're a little smaller. They measure about 2.4 meters shoulder height, and their eyesight is not that great, but their sense of smell is really good. So basically what happened is that the elephant sort of heard me coming and tracking that chimp, and just waited in the undergrowth. And I ended up sort of face to face with that elephant, froze. The elephant then started charging, and then the only option you've got there is to run, and I can tell you run fast. And a couple of meters into my sprint, I just got caught up in the undergrowth and caught up in lianas, etc. And with panic, I just could not move. And and so then you have your whole life flashing before your eyes. What was maybe a couple of seconds actually felt like long hours, to be frank. And the elephant came literally about a meter away from me, stopped, froze again, and then moved away. So that was, life-changing moment for me.
Yeah, I think that would be a life-changing moment for many people, feeling that they escaped with their, with their lives in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
It's like how do you find yourself in? I suppose there is nothing you can do about that because you're working to track these chimps because that's what you're there to do. You're researching their behaviors and trying to find out more about them, and then you come face to face with what is essentially a brick wall or a bulldozer. Did you think that elephant was trying to hurt you in any way?
No, I really don't think so. I think, these encounters, I can laugh about it now. Obviously, it was quite stressful at the time, but those are really a reminder of what amazing wildlife you've got out there and how, how everyone involved in this sort of work can make a difference. And it's up, however little your role is, whatever you do and however you do it, actually, everyone can make a dent and make a difference. Whether it be through helping analyze some data, camera trap images, or the whole sort of citizen science movement, or whether it be tracking an animal, or whether it be analyzing the data, or even helping us raise funds. I just like that idea of, different encounters, but we're all trying to make a dent.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you're talking about there in terms of like citizen science, and maybe that's one that we'll end on. Two questions for you before we do move on. One from you. What was the name of that fruit? I just want to make sure that whenever I see that fruit, that I have my senses aware that I could be charged at an elephant at any time.
There are a lot of fruit that both species enjoy. That particular fruit at the time, I would need to pass and put my hand up and say I'll need to do a bit of research and remember
Okay,
that.
sure.
Um,
All right then. We've got a question from one of our guests from last week, Gavina, is asking, would you be tempted to try that with a saltwater crocodile?
Saltwater crocodiles are quite a bit bigger. So porosis is absolutely massive. So I might pass on that one. I might chicken out.
Don't worry, I would too.
Yeah.
Let's have a quick look. We've got a few minutes left, so let's. I'd like to finish off with some of the work that you've been doing and kind of find out what's next for you. You're working in not South Africa, in Eastern Africa, a beautiful place in the world. Can you tell us about some of the work that you're doing out there, some of the citizen science? I think we were talking about a website called
Zooniverse, yes.
Tell us all about Zooniverse.
So, sure. So basically, we're doing quite a bit of work as FFI across Eastern Africa, a number of countries. But I guess the one where we're calling on citizens and trying to get citizens involved to help us do some analysis is in South Sudan. Amazing place. I mean, I could go on hours and hours talking about South Sudan and how an amazing place it is. Fauna and Flora International has been there for many years, over a decade now, and we keep making new discoveries. And the honest truth is there's so much more to discover. So we've collected a huge number of camera trap images over the years, and we simply don't have the resources, the time to go through all of those. So we've uploaded all those camera trap images onto a website called Zooniverse, and basically people can then help us tell us what is on that image. And you don't need to be an expert. Anyone can get involved. Even if it's to say there's nothing on that camera trap image, that is already a huge help. We've got over 500,000 images on that website now. There are many more to come. As I'm speaking, I've got colleagues who are in the bush deploying new camera traps in South Sudan, so more will be coming in and trickling through. But in South Sudan, we've had forest elephants. You know, people don't realize that South Sudan can be this amazing transition between the deep, thick sort of rainforest of the Congo Basin to the much more sort of open areas of Eastern Africa, like, you know, the rangelands of Kenya, for instance. So that transition ecologically and in terms of biodiversity is absolutely mind-blowing. We found wild dog in one of those sites, forest elephants, chimps, bongos, and every time we're in the field, we keep finding new species, and there's been a number of new species science discovered over the last couple of years in these sites. So yeah, people watching, do get involved and check out Zooniverse South Sudan that we do with our partners in the US, Bucknell University.
We've just had a comment coming in saying, pre-warning to anyone wanting to do some Zooniverse camera traps, it's very, very addictive. I'm going to put the link down below in this description. So you're saying anybody can get involved, they just go onto the website and they just go through these camera trap pictures and footage and say what they see.
Exactly. Yeah. So basically what happens on our end is that as soon as a camera trap image has been viewed by 3 or 4 people saying the same thing, then that's a fact. And that's what we take on as data. And even things like picking up on seasonality, you know, finding a red colobus, for instance, with a young, and understanding that seasonal pattern is really important for us. So we can then adapt our conservation activities on the ground, whether it be the patrols or whether it be the biodiversity monitoring that we do there. So yeah, wide open invitation.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Nicolas. We're just about out of time. Quickly, so what's next for you once we're allowed to kind of move and get going? It seems like lockdown is easing. So what's up next for you?
Yeah, so right now I was due to be in South Sudan actually, and I was due to be in Kenya next month. So trying to desperately do what we need to do with the teams and with our partners there remotely. So yeah, desperately trying to see how we can help the teams on the ground and our partners manage the COVID crisis, because that has had a huge dent. And ultimately, you know, this pandemic really started with an environmental issue. And my hope is that people will not forget that and that we can make sure that people remember that, because we need to think of those sort of post-COVID world as well, and making sure that the environment and that natural resources are really at the center of that. So trying to help our partners and our teams on the ground to, you know, hold tight and to still do some amazing work in the midst of that. So we've been providing rations and still doing some field activities and supporting communities and still going on with some monitoring as much as we can, despite the circumstances. But yeah, we need to build that, and I think of what next, basically, to make sure that COVID can be a turning point, but for the best.
Great, fantastic. Well, good luck with your work out in Kenya and East Africa. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I was fascinated by all your stories, and you just sounded like one of those people that's got more wild encounters than I have. So an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Nicolas. Let's definitely keep in touch. Thanks. And yeah, have a great day.
Thanks a lot, and good luck for the new show.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Wild Animal Babies. It comes out this Sunday on Sky Nature. I hope you tune in.
All right. Thanks a lot.
All right, take care, Nicolas.
Bye.
And that was Nicolas Tubbs, everybody, from Fauna and Flora International, telling us about his experiences working with animals. I'd call this the wonders of the savannah, but really he's been everywhere. Let's have a look. Who have we got next week? We've got a whole bunch of guests, so check out the video list. Remember, if you aren't already subscribed, please press that subscribe button. Your support means a lot. Please comment below and let us know what you're thinking about the different shows. Hello to you all, to Kaylin Jackson. Right, I think that's all done for today. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I will see you next time. That's next week, Monday at 11 a.m. Take care. Have a good one.